Hello, this is Mr. Griffin, and welcome to day one of our math. And I'll be talking about Unit 1, Lesson 1. And the title of this unit is Building a Math Community Through Real Data. Building a Math Community Through Real Data. Today is Monday, August the 24th. Our I can statement, I can add and subtract large numbers. And the standard associated with that statement is NC4, NBT4. I can add and subtract large numbers. Our essential question, how is data useful in real world situations? How is data useful in real world situations? So at the end of the day, we should be able to answer that question. Our problem of the day, we're going to brainstorm a list of all the ways you practice math over the summer. So if you're watching this recording, what I want you to do is go ahead and pause it and think about the ways that you practice math over the summer. Now, one example of a way that you could have practiced math during the summer was Dreambox. If you worked on Dreambox during the summer and you completed some lessons, that's the same as practicing math over the summer. If you work with a sibling or your parents with your multiplication facts or anything else related to math, that's practicing math over the summer. Again, this is Unit 1, Lesson 1. What will I be able to do after today's lesson? That answer is found in the learning targets right here. I will be able to interpret a bar graph and create and answer questions about the data presented in the graph. So we're going to go over bar graphs, and you're going to be able to create and answer questions about the data presented in the graph. Our launch. We have two questions over here on this right side. What do you notice about this graph is the first one. What do you wonder about this graph is the second question. So let's take a minute, again, pause, and I want you to take a close look at the graph and try to answer those questions. Now, some answers that you could have come up with for that first one, what do you notice about this graph? One thing that stands out to me would be Team 1 scored a lot of points in that second period. In fact, they scored more points than they did in the first period, and Team 1 in that particular period scored more points than anybody else. Our second question, what do you wonder about this graph? All right, you could be wondering, for instance, how many periods did they actually have? Did they play just 2 periods, or was it more than 4? Are we missing some data, or is this everything? Okay, those are just questions that you could be thinking about when we consider what do you wonder about it. Our next slide, we're going to have a discussion. Before we do that, we're going to look at the first part up here. What are some expectations for class discussions? What are some expectations for class discussions? Now, keeping in mind that right now we're doing remote learning. We're doing remote learning only at this moment. So we're going to think about expectations that's going to help that work much, much better for us. And you can pause the video and start thinking about expectations. Now, some things that you could have come up with for expectations include come prepared to learn. And when I say come prepared to learn, I mean that if I've given you an assignment to do prior to the lesson, then make sure that you've done that lesson, because especially for math, one lesson builds upon the next. So in order to do well in today's lesson, you needed to have at least tried the day before's lesson. Our second part up here, when we create graphs, there are 2 types of data. You got categorical, numerical. For categorical data, data categories like food, clothes, and hobbies are all in there. So for categorical, that means that we're putting things in categories, such as right here, examples of flavors of ice cream. there's many different types of ice cream, and you can put them all in categories. Down here, numerical data. An example would be number of pets. Number of pets. How many pets do you have would give us an answer for numerical data. And generally, numerical data would have a number in front of it. It would have a number associated with in your answer. How does someone collect data? The last question. Well, let's think about maybe a scientist. If a scientist is doing research on, well, how many alligators are in a particular pond, they would actually, one way that they could collect the data is actually go out there and visually try to see each alligator. And they may do some other things such as tagging the alligators to identify them, but they're going to actually count how many are in there to get that data. That's just one example. This is our bar graph discussion. And if you look here at the top, it says types of pets our grade level has. And let's just pause. We'll pause, and I want you to take a minute to look at all of these different categories. Okay, so we're going to look at our questions on here. And after each question, if you're watching the video, I want you to go on and pause it so that you can try to find the answers inside of the actual graph. Number one, which animal was most popular? How do you know? Which animal was most popular? How do you know? Let's take a look at it. So let's look at these different, the different animals on here. Cats, fish, dogs. It looks to me that dogs are the most popular because they have, their bar has the highest value. Dogs are the most popular because their bar has the most value to it. If you go all the way across here, you'll see that it's at 30. 30 dogs. That's much higher than fish, which is here, and cats, which is here at 24. Number two, what type of data is represented in this graph, categorical or numerical? How do you know? Pause the video, and I want you to take a look at the information inside of the graph. And the answer that you should be coming up with is categorical data. The answer is categorical data. And when people were surveyed, they would have been asked about a category versus a number. They would have been asked about a category versus a number. So a possible question that would have been asked is, what types of pets does our grade level have? What types of pets does our grade level have? And that puts everything into category. That puts the answers into categories. When you ask that question, it's not specifically asking you for a number. All right, number four, maybe a little bit hard to see on the screen here, but I'm going to read it because at the bottom it says, why would someone use a scale when creating a graph? Why would someone use a scale when creating a graph? Okay, if you're having trouble thinking about a scale, let's take a look at this side over here. Okay, and a person may create a scale because their data, their numbers are too large to actually fit in here. Okay, so the data includes large numbers, and it may not fit on the graph if they were going in order. For instance, if they went if they went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, if they went all the way up, then it wouldn't fit on this. It wouldn't fit on the actual screen here. Okay, I think I might have skipped over a question here. Okay, and I'll go back. That was answer number 4. So I'm going to go back to number 3. So what do you notice about the scale of what do you notice about the scale of this particular graph? So again, the scale is going to be over here. So if you go 0 to 3 to 6, you're trying to figure out, well, what is a pattern here? What is the difference between one line to the next? And if you'll see, from 0 to 3 is 3, from 3 to 6 is 3, from 6 to 9, that's 3. So the actual scale is 3. The actual scale is 3 because we're counting by 3 to get from one number to another. Okay? And we're going to move on. I think I might have answered everything. Okay, so how does it change the way the data is portrayed? It changes the actual size of the bars. So it changes the size of the bars, but it doesn't change the proportion between the bars. So it changes, again, the size of the bars right here, how tall it is, but it doesn't change the proportion between the bars. So this distance right here is going to be exactly the same between each one. 0 to 3, 3 to 6 is still 3, 6 to 9 is still 3, so that doesn't change. All right, so moving on to our next one. So now we've got independent practice. Independent practice and homework if we don't finish it today. Now, you can, this particular page is going to be page 3 in your binder. Page 3 in your binder. And by now, I think most of you should already have your binders. And there's 2 different ways that we're going to be assigning this possibly to you. And your teacher may require you to go into the actual binder and go to page number 3 to work on these. Or in my case, I have assigned them to you in Google Classroom on a Google form. I have assigned them to you. This is Mr. Griffin's homeroom on a Google form in Google Classroom. Okay, and your teacher will talk more specifically with you about how to turn in this work to them. And we'll take a look at the graph really quickly here. It says number of, it's a bar graph, of course. It says number of M&Ms. And down here, you notice we got different colors: red, blue, green, brown, orange, and yellow. That's the M&M color. And on this side, we have the number of M&Ms. Okay, it's always great to look at the graph first and kind of try to get an understanding of before you start jumping into the actual questions. Look at the graph and try to get an understanding about what is it really telling you. Number 1 says, what color occurred most often? What color occurred most often? Now, you're going to be looking at which one of these bars are going to be the highest. And it's pretty obvious that red occurred the most. And how do I know that? Because the value of the bar is more than any other one. So which color occurred least often? And how do you know? The exact opposite of the most, the least. Which one has the smallest value in their bar? And it's going to be between the blue and the green right here. So let's see. It's going to be the green with the smallest value. How do I know? Because I can look at the bar and tell that it has the smallest value, and it is at 4. And everything else for each other color is going to be higher. Okay? So we've actually we did the first one, and you're going to be responsible for doing the rest of them. Like I said, your teacher will explain how to actually submit that to you. Okay? Thank you. And remember, you can always go back in this video, pause it as often as you like to get a better understanding. Thank you.